Administrative Search Committee. I'll call the meeting to order. And before we go any further, I just want to let everyone know that the meeting is being recorded. It is available very quickly, I believe, on YouTube. Channel 18 is doing a good job of that. And again, it is being recorded. And pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Town of Harwich Town Administrator Selection Committee is being conducted via remote participation. There's no one in attendance. The members of the public will be permitted. We all are meeting remotely. With that, has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of our last meeting? And if so, I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
Make a motion.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, to accept the minutes from Wednesday, April 15th, 2020.
Do we have a second on that motion to accept?
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and has been seconded. All those in favor, we'll do that by roll call. Julie?
Aye.
Dan is not present. Linda? I can't hear you, Linda. Nope.
No.
Scott, I see her microphone is green, but I can't hear her.
I think she needs to mess around with her connections on which microphone she's actually using. You might be trying to use the laptop, or it's either that or you have a mute, maybe you have a mute button on your microphone on your headset.
I'm so looking forward to the time we can sit all in one room and do this.
Indeed.
No, I don't hear you.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Channel 18 was recording. I just, this is sort of a backup way of recording.
Okay.
So Linda, if you open up that gear in the top right corner of your screen there, and you go into the microphone settings, if there's only one, you can only select it, but if there's two, you can try the other one.
One. Oh, there you go.
Is that you, Linda?
Hello?
Here you are.
Ah,
Hey, Linda. All right.
Exciting.
We're trying to go through the roster here to get a...
Hi.
Okay, very good. Mike?
Aye.
And I am an aye. So we have a 4-0 with Dan not being here. To accept the minutes of a previous meeting. Status of the, from the Board of Selectmen, they have decided to go ahead and accept some of the work that we have done. They voted to go forward with not having a consultant, and Bernie Lynch has been notified of that action. And they also voted to go ahead with an advertisement. Thank you, Linda and Bob Lawton, for doing a lot of work on putting that together. The ad was revised a couple of times, but I believe it's gone out. Linda, is that correct?
Yes, it is. At this point, it is in the Cape Cod Times. It should be in the Beacon shortly, within the next day or two, and it should be in the Globe.
And there was a little bit of a discrepancy in what went out in the Globe. Is that accurate?
Because they only wanted 10 lines.
Okay.
So Bob had to cut down a whole bunch of the verbiage that was in the ad that went into MMA and the Cape Cod Times. And I think we sent around the ad, or maybe we didn't yet, but it's basically The one that went into the Globe is Harwich is seeking a seasoned municipal or business management professional. Not that much more information.
And then the
Website.
whole, and then the job description, the full description is on the website for any candidate to see?
Yes, the full description is supposed to be there, the employment application, all of that on, and the website is in all of them, which is going to the Harwich Mass Gov home pages, employment opportunities.
Okay, so they have, potential candidates certainly have enough information to go ahead and proceed with with the process, I would say.
Yes.
Okay, does anybody have any other comments on that?
No, but they did decide to do 3 weeks versus 2, correct?
Yes. The all the resumes are due in by May 22nd. And they also, Chief didn't mention, but decided against doing a range. And so what's in the ad is 160 plus or minus.
Yeah, I saw that.
I think it's really, it's a bit frustrating, you know. I mean, we've put some time and thought. I think I'm really honored to be on this committee with the folks that are here, and I think we gave them some really good ideas about the salary range. But they've chosen to do it a little bit different. We recommend, and I'm fine with that. They have the elected body, and all we can do is recommend the best we can. And I think we've done a great job, and we can continue to do that. Right now, I think a lot of this is going to just depend if they have any further questions or want to make any changes to the process. But the ad has gone out. The process has been set up to have the resumes go back to Anita, I believe. Linda, if I'm correct?
That's correct.
And then from there, we have to decide going further on how we're going to evaluate the resumes and the applications we get back. So that's kind of, I think, where we are on our agenda tonight. I think it's a wait and see thing. And they have 3 weeks. I see Dan is here.
I am here.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Dan.
But I'm thanks. Hi, Chief.
Dan, the only business we've conducted so far was to accept. We voted to accept the minutes of the previous meeting, and we're just Linda and myself are bringing you folks up to date as to where we are. The selectmen did agree not to have Bernie Lynch's company do the work for us. We're going to do it. The ad has been written and submitted. And Linda, would you just refresh all of us on where that's gone, please, in a timeline?
Hi, Dan. The ads are in the Cape Cod Times. They are in the MMA Beacon, which is the Mass Municipal Association, and they should be in the Boston Globe within the next couple of days. The ad goes, the resumes are to May 22nd, and there's information in there for people to go into the website, the town website, specific areas as to where they can find the application, the profile, etc.
And all that information, Dan, will go electronically to the town clerk, and we'll be set, and then it'll be then up to us to decide how that information that we get back is evaluated. So that's where we are right now. Just starting that discussion on a review of or kind of talking about a process going forward as to how we should do that. So I'd just like to open it up for discussion.
I guess my question is, based on the ad and going back to, especially the Globe ad that will refer back to the website, we have a fairly broad description, which is great. I guess, in my mind, we should probably figure out at least the top 3 to 5 things we're we're going to try to vet so that we're not looking all over the place, but that we're, and again, not that we have to compare exact apples to apples, but just saying something that weeds it out so that we've got some similarities.
Well, I appreciate Linda sending out the questions from the last administrator's search. I think that's a really great place to start. And as I said in my email to all you folks today, you know, we can tweak that. You can do your own inputs, and then we could collectively get back together at our next meeting and maybe discuss what we think appropriate questions are. I have not had the time to really go through those yet, but I think we could do that within a week or so's time, if that makes sense to everybody.
Yeah.
And those questions are really for discussion. I think some of them are okay. I think we're going to change some, would be my assumption, but it's a good starting point.
Absolutely. And who, Julie and Linda, were you on the last interview committee when Administrator Clark was hired?
I was not on that committee. He was there when I was elected.
I was the chair of the Board of Selectmen at the time, so I had that peripheral, but I did not, again, a Board of Select member did not sit on that committee, just like this one.
Okay, my point being to figure out maybe what didn't work for questions. I think we can probably come up with some good ones, or if you thought there were things that didn't work, we certainly could go forward. I would say as we get closer in the next meeting or two to go over these questions, I would look for direction. My personal opinion is that would call for an executive session when we start discussing questions.
Actually, I asked that of Michelle Rodonzo, that very question, just to make sure we're sort of staying okay. And she says, I asked her if we could do question preparation in executive session. And she said, in my opinion, you cannot discuss the development of interview questions or the development of general criteria for rating resumes in executive session. So we do have to do that in public.
Okay.
Doesn't that equate to giving the answers to the test?
Yes, that is the point.
I was almost going to go the other way, Chief.
I'd ask another lawyer. I think that's not, I don't really get good advice, to be honest with you. But
Could I ask a question? Does anybody ever ask for written responses to interview questions before they actually have the interview? Or is that just considered taboo? I mean, some of these questions, you know, it would be really interesting to see, how somebody's writing style is. And since we're not doing in-person interviews, since it's going to be something like this, which it breaks my heart a little bit because you don't always really get the essence of a person this way. I just wonder if there's ever been a precedent, maybe even to have something written, you know, not necessarily direct answers to these questions, but ask them to actually submit something in writing to us.
That's an interesting question, Dan. I've seen it done in senior positions. Things like giving them the current profit and loss statement, the financial statements, and say, we'd like to do such and thus. How would you approach it using this information? I've seen it done. I haven't seen it done a lot. I mean, it's a possibility. Would we want to pose a question, a specific question, and say, how would you blah, 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 and have them give us back a page as to what would their approach be, what would they have to do? That's an interesting idea.
And given that communication skills is a major part of this job, and given that written communication skills are very different than verbal, it would be kind of interesting to see the person's writing style and how they articulate things in writing.
And see if they know English language.
Yeah. And I don't know whether it's even allowed. I mean, I guess the lawyers would have to opine on that.
You can do that. I mean, it's not illegal.
well, then, I mean, we do have a little time because we could see how many applications we get back, and then between now and then develop a process. And I like Dan's idea. I mean, it's a good idea. I mean, these are different times. I mean, certainly, you know, in fairness to the interim, you know, administrator, I would just say, I mean, one of the questions should be, what kind of disasters have you had to deal with? You know, that type of thing. So, I mean, that could be a pre-done question, and get a written response, and you know, an action plan, how they handled it, he or she handled it.
Chief, even more specifically, because there's so much information out there, good, bad, ugly, and not ugly, about exactly how this is being handled, you know, at a federal, state, and right down to the municipal level. I think an interesting written question would be, as town manager, town administrator, how would you actually handle this? What skills would you bring to the plate to actually deal with a crisis such as this, as you know, as the town leader? Be interesting to see that in writing. Maybe they give us some ideas.
There you go. You know, Dan, I would say to you, it certainly is relevant.
Yeah.
Relevant. You know, take it. If there's any advantages to this disaster, there's one. See how they would respond.
There's also no playbook, so you'd really find out how creative and resourceful the person is.
That's for sure. Yeah, clearly there's no playbook.
And they could also talk about some other serious issue they had to deal with. What was it? Just necessarily this one, because they may not be, say they're not working at this point, so they're not having any ability to have an impact on something. So it could be specifically the disaster we're in, the country, or is there something else that you had to deal with?
But, and so the only other thing I would say to that, though, is we're also, and according to our ad and what we've discussed, is we're also looking for somebody who may have business management. So that's a little bit different than being in that, you know, the environment of government and town administrator. And, you know, and again, in all fairness, you know, this is unprecedented. So even those who are in this role may not have a great ability to respond. I agree. We can all talk about what things should have been done better and different, and certainly earlier. But I think, you know, if we're going to look at that kind of a question, it needs to be fair to somebody who is not in this particular background.
I agree with you, Julie, to a point, but the reality is, let's say the Board of Selectmen chose a candidate that didn't have experience in this type of thing. Well, they're going to get experience with it, because we're still going to be dealing with COVID-19 for months, if not years. So if they don't have experience, I think they need to be able to come up and think on their feet. And there's nothing wrong with that either. And someone from you know, a Harvard Business School or something, I don't know, might be able to think very well on their feet. There's nothing wrong with it. But they're going to be thrust into a real crisis situation here. We have the COVID situation, and we are going to be facing really, really tough financial difficulties in this town, not only with the budget coming after July, but the budget we're in. So someone's going to have a really good feel for how to think outside the box and deal with something, as Dan said, it's not in the playbook.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I'm just looking at the other side of it if you didn't have that sort of background. But to your point, you're going to have to deal with it regardless. So I don't disagree. I'm just pointing to the other side.
And I agree with Julie. I think we want to make sure that while we are in, I mean, the towns are in, and our town is in some serious situation on a number of levels, that someone who can, it's not to make sure that we don't ask a question that leaves people out who would be able to deal with with this kind of a serious issue. So I think it's a good idea, personally, to ask somebody for a written response, because I think Dan is right. There are people who can speak well, but their writing skills are not that good. The organization of a topic to be able to get a point across in 3 paragraphs. So this is an interesting thing to do.
Yeah, I think it's great. especially as you say, Dan, we're kind of in a, we're in a bizarre position where we don't even get to meet the person and even get that kind of a read, so I think it is a great idea. Good way to analyze.
I had the fortune to be able to speak with with school committee over our principal Buckhead, who's now gone. He accepted his job there, but we did it in this forum. It was interesting. I would have been I would have liked to have been able to sit in front of people. I like eye-to-eye contact, and I think that Dan, I'm sensing that you feel the same way. I think we all do. It's you really can tell a lot about somebody, and they can tell a lot about us when we sit there and you can actually see mannerisms and that type of thing. But that's we don't have that ability. So to think outside the box and to go forward a little differently, let's just be as effective as we can. Do you think so? I mean, am I reading the tea leaves here correctly? That maybe we're going to produce interview questions that we're going to send to the candidates to have them respond to. I think it's a good idea. Do we need that in the form of a motion? I'm looking for guidance. No consensus.
I don't think we need a motion on that. I mean, we're talking about a process here, but I'm not sure because I think we have to think about how many questions would you send to someone? Would you send them 2 questions, 1 question, 10 questions? I think we need to think about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So the sense is this is a direction we'd like to take.
Well, yeah, Linda, I think that I would not ask more than 2 questions in writing, but I think the 2 questions I would ask are what specifically what about your leadership skills would be most applicable and relevant given to the realities of today, and then sort of what game plan, how would you use those skills to best advocate for, represent, direct, manage at a town level, specifically. Even if we end up not hiring the person, we might get that playbook chief. So, I mean, that's where I would, a specific question about the skills that they think they have, and then the application of those skills specifically to the challenges of today. You could have been a great town manager for the last 15 years and flunk today. This is totally different.
Yes. Yes, it is. Yeah. And they have to be able to apply it to Massachusetts. They have to be able to apply it to Barnstable County, and they absolutely have to be able to apply it to the town of Harwich. They've got to know how we work.
And by the same token, Chief, they have to understand how things work in Washington and on Beacon Hill.
Sure. Because
we are not going to solve this with the resources we have. We are going to need outside resources, whether it comes from Beacon Hill, and they're going to be $3 or $4 billion short this budget cycle too. If you listen to the rainy day fund, when I was up there, we thought we were fat in cash. We had about $1.2 billion in the rainy day fund. They're talking about a $3.5 to $4 billion deficit for the next fiscal year. That's Massachusetts. So. Unless we can figure out how to tap into the printing press. We don't have one here. We've got to do a balanced budget in town and in Boston. So the only place that doesn't have to balance a budget to deal with the crisis, we know where that is. And
yep.
I don't see how this happens unless somebody really understands how the process works. It'd be great if we already had somebody with existing relationships with our delegation in Washington. Also knows the landscape in Beacon Hill. So those are the things I'm going to be looking for. And that's a stretch, right, to get somebody who has that.
I was listening to you talk about the printing press. A prior town administrator, Jim Merriam, used to mumble about how he was going to go into the parking lot and shake his private money tree for us.
Ooh, that's kind of creepy.
I think they cut it down.
Yeah, they probably cut it down.
That's good.
I don't have anything else. Maybe we could put some thoughts in some emails back and forth to the group over the next week or so. Selectmen do meet tomorrow night. I don't see anything relevant to what we've already presented to them. I think we've done a good job to with a profile and suggestions for the ad and a recommendation for a salary. And Dan, they didn't really do that. They went 160 plus or minus. That's what they wanted in the thing. So that's okay. We again, I told the folks before that we recommend, and I think we're doing a good job. But just because we recommend doesn't mean they're going to follow everything we suggest. That's okay.
Did the Board of Selectmen have any input relative to time frame, Chief?
They seem divided on that, and I'm not exactly sure how I can put a number to that, whether it was 4-1, 3-2, but there was a sense from some of some urgency that we expressed. I thought we were pretty clear on that. I know when I was on with them, I was extremely clear on that. And then I believe some of the board doesn't feel that there's no hurry. We could take our time on this. That's up for them to decide.
Chief, I mean, I'm guessing at this point that with a May 22nd end date, a few weeks maybe to sort through them and I know set up some questions and times with people, and then the board with the finalists and then contract. I mean, I think we're probably looking at August maybe for a end of July, beginning of August to get somebody on board at this point.
Sure.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
I think that's where we're at now, Mike. I do.
And as we know, that's if we keep it moving. I mean, if it starts slowing down again, I mean, we were appointed the beginning of January, and here we are, the end of April. So,
yeah.
Right.
Well, let's.
Actually, if you, I was looking at there had been an original timeline that we were going to start having resumes, and there was expectation that by the end of June, we would select a candidate, or the Board of Selectmen would select a candidate. If you look and sort of take the dating, we're looking at something like mid to end of June, July possibly, of the Board of Selectmen, us taking 2 or 3 weeks to get through resumes, interview people, et cetera, but it could get to, mid-July. So I think, yeah, if we've got, it's going to be the end of July, even if we keep to a tight time frame.
So
I agree.
I just wanted to say, when I watched the board's meeting, one thing I think that we all talked about at our last meeting, which, God, I can't remember now, all the days blend together, if that was last week or the week before, but was that, it was pointed out that Wellfleet had their town administrator who was willing to stay on even while and I believe they were continuing on, right? Obviously. And that Truro had suspended theirs. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, they suspended theirs and she's willing to stay on, I think, through September.
Right. So I just, and I know that there was a lot of discussion about the Wellfleet ad and the board's meeting, et cetera. I just want to point out a couple things that concern me a little bit is based on the timeline that, we originally had and the timeline we're talking about right now. We're also well aware that what we're hearing currently is that come this fall, we could be really in for another rough round of things. And it makes me nervous, honestly, as a taxpayer, as a resident, that we're going to go out that far. I'm just bringing it out there to say that that's a concern of mine, because while we're trying to vet this process, it's a little concerning that we may end up with somebody brand new who has to, again, I know I said it before, but get up to speed at a time where it's going to be critical.
Julie, I think this is a continuum. I don't think this is a question of it getting bad again. It's really hard to find people at this point who think this summer is salvageable down here. And, as a board member of Cape Cod 5, we actually had a board meeting this morning really talking about what the landscape is. Mm-hmm. And let's remain hopeful. You always want to hope for the best, but you got to have a plan for the worst. And the problem is this all flows through to municipal budget, because when you start seeing businesses that aren't going to be able to make their real estate tax payments, and also the local share on some of the rooms tax. There's things that we just sort of, was money that was going to flow in automatically. There is real reason to be, and that's to say nothing of residential mortgage. Residential taxes as well. So we're going to know a lot more by July because we're going to know what kind of summer we're having and what the failure rates are going to be. But
yeah, and I think personally, and again, I'm just speaking to what I've read and digested is, obviously the Cape is an anomaly, right? So we're hearing about, curves flattening, but we've got the summer and we all know what that means. So by no way do I mean things in terms of improving and then getting worse. I'm on the same page as you. What I'm saying though is come the fall, we're already not going to be better and maybe worse again. So,
it's going to be a long winter next year.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long.
So I'm just raising that concern because I think we have to, as a public meeting, people need to be thinking about that too. As we're trying to, refine this process and vet the most viable candidates. I also want people to understand that there's an urgency here that, maybe would not exist normally. Well, wouldn't, not maybe, it wouldn't exist normally, but we're under that kind of, I don't know if the pressure is the right word, but, it's a different scenario, I guess. And I'm just trying to point that out for public purposes.
I'd agree. And that's, I think, one of the issues I did bring to the board. This is urgent. I feel very strongly about that they need to act very quickly and get somebody in place. If it's not the interim, then they need to get somebody in place, because if it's not the interim, they're going to have to really, there's going to be a learning curve like they've never had to experience. On that, the example that you did give with a couple of the other communities where the administrators or the manager, I'm not sure which were, agreed to stay on, is a different situation.
Right.
We don't have an administrator. We have an interim. Now he's on round 2, and just from, personally and professionally, how long can you just tell this person that you're just going to continue to be interim? And things are, where actions are going into play daily that will affect this town for days, weeks, months, and years to go. So he's continuing to march on, and if a new administrator wants to go in a different direction, then that needs to happen sooner than later.
Chief, has there been any guidance yet on, I've been seeing a May 12th date as the second 90-day interim appointment. Is the board getting any guidance? What happens after May 12th?
I would have to defer to our former select board members. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what the charter says. I don't know procedure. I don't know. I don't know. Julie and Linda, are we on uncharted territory here?
I feel we are. This is not something I experienced as a board member. So I think there's just a lot of things the board really needs to look at and consider hard. I think, I don't know, Linda, do you know more in terms of, experience with any kind of interim that short term? I just don't.
I guess I'd say that while this is unique to us, I highly doubt it's unique to other communities.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I would have the expectation that our board chair would be talking to council and getting as much information and interpretation and guidance as he possibly could to be able to move forward on something. I don't see Larry as, kind of doing nothing. I figure he's out to figure this out, because you worked with him as I have, and he's probably out there trying to figure out, probably getting assessments. It's like when there's somebody has an interpretation of the law. What did some other community do? What are other communities looking at it? How are they interpreting it? So I think that's probably what is going to happen. And I I highly doubt that this is unique to municipal government. This has happened before in other places, maybe just with us.
But could I ask a question? Because I don't, it's probably not legal, and I know that's why we're going through the process we are. But boy, I tell you, if I were king for a day, I would fall back on, we have never seen anything like this. You talk to the banking community, you talk to historians, you talk to people in the private or the public sector. And if there was any way to navigate this, to them simply writing a contract and moving forward, we cannot bring in somebody from the outside in midstream.
And you are getting dangerously close to discussing someone not in executive session. So we need to stop that.
I've stopped, but
we're going to be in trouble if we do continue this kind of conversation.
Well, I'm the one saying it, so the only one that can get into trouble is me. I guess I can get thrown off
the whole committee will get bagged for it.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yes, we will.
For the committee,
criticized for this.
For the committee, let it be known that we did discuss and gave me clear direction of urgency to move forward.
All right.
And I did that, and you can read between the lines all you want. I feel strongly as well. I'm living this every day. It gets harder every day. It doesn't get easier. We need direct.
Me too, Chief. Me too.
For all of us. And in any large organization, you need clear, decisive action. And right now, the flip side is, I don't think it's fair to keep a guy doing this in an interim position like this. We need to move on. The selectmen need to act. And I think we've recommended what we think is the right thing to do. And we've recommended that they move quickly. And it's up to them to do what they think and what the citizens think is right.
Okay.
And just to clarify, me bringing that subject up, I feel is relevant to the public understanding what we're up against, what the town is up against, what the chief is up against, what business owners are up against, and never mind the residents of Harwich. And so overall, as we talked about the last couple meetings, continuity, stability are key. And the average person, whether they're watching this, which I'm sure many are not, but read it in the paper, need to understand the urgency that's involved. And that's my only point in bringing it up again, is to say it is urgent, it remains urgent. And as the time goes on, it gets more and more urgent. So that, just for clarification and for everybody's sake, that is the reason I brought that up. So.
And I agree with that, Julie. I mean, this is.
No, I know you do, and I'm just making that clarification for public purposes again, to clarify that we're all on the same page here, trying to do the best thing we can for the taxpayers, for the residents, for our fire, for our police, for our town, and people who are involved will watch this. People who are not involved will hopefully read the Chronicle or, something to understand that it's important, and that their town really needs some stability. So again, just for clarification.
During this situation, and I need to just remind everyone that we have an interim town administrator with an assistant that works part-time 2 days a week. So not only is he hand-strung by being an interim, and he is, he has a part-time assistant. Bob Lawton is a terrific gentleman and a really smart guy, but it's only 2 days a week. Mm-hmm. So that's the other part of this equation. It affects the whole organization right now. And our leadership at Town Hall is with an interim town administrator who's been doing the job and a part-time administrator that works 2 days a week. I mean,
right.
we're doing a great job, but it's asking an awful lot of an interim administrator and a part-time administrator. We need to, I'm hoping that the board will move quickly and decisively.
And I hope they do too, Chief. I just want to make sure that we stay out of the realm of making comments like just write a contract or just do things that may or may not be against the charter. Mm-hmm. To move quickly as we possibly can.
So noted. Do we have anything else to discuss? I think we have our kind of our homework, so to speak. I think the idea has been presented, and with consensus, we agree we're going to develop some questions in some situations, scenarios that will be given to the candidates prior to their interview with us. I think am I accurate with that consensus? Mm-hmm. I believe we are. And then there may or may not be some other questions that we may want to develop, one or two short questions that we should develop when we do see them or not in person, what do we call this, virtual reality thing.
We may see them in person. I mean, maybe we'll move along with this foolishness by the time we're actually looking to talk to someone. That's at least a month away, if not 6 weeks.
Well, I appreciate your glass half full take on life.
I am there.
And one other thing though, right? So just to move, like we talked about executive session and Linda, you provided clarification on what can and cannot, but what shouldn't go into executive session. So I think it's helpful for us to know, where we can go into executive session, where we understand where we can't on questions. So just looking for, or even just if we could get clarification on that ahead of the next meeting.
I respect our counsel, and if we're not going to listen to them, then why do we have them? But common sense to me would say that you would not, in open session, which we are, discuss the questions that we're going to pose to candidates, other than ones that we're going to prepare and have them respond back to us. It makes absolutely no sense to me, lawyer or no lawyer. That just makes no sense to me. So I respect, Linda, the guidance you were given by counsel, but I think we need to check on that further. Am I out in left field on this one, or does anybody agree with me?
No, I would have thought that we could, but, I understand, what you're saying that the attorney said, but I am a little confused by that myself. I would have thought that they would have preferred us to go into executive session by, I think we're kind of setting ourselves up for failure if we can't, but if that's the ruling and that's the hard, fast ruling, I get it, but I agree. I think it's a little different than I would have.
Analogy stance. You're giving the answers to the test.
Yeah, I think it's
well, being an accountant by trade, I've never understood the law because it never makes sense to me. And accountants are very, it's like the debits are on one side, the credits are on the other. This, right? And yeah. So I yes, it is, but would the committee like a request for our next meeting to ask if Michelle would make herself available for these specific questions? And perhaps she can, because when we had our organization meeting a month ago, I know that she went through a ton of information for us. And
we all have that. We have that written information.
And I think that maybe just having those, would you like that done?
I think I'd like to review the written material, and I think a simple, if you or I would email her the direct question that we would like to discuss in executive session, the questions we plan to pose to candidates. And are you telling me that that is her opinion, or is that law that says we cannot do it? Because there's a difference.
No problem. I will do that.
Thank you. We have anything else? No? Right.
Next meeting?
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. What do you want to meet? What's a good time should we meet next week, or do you want to give it a couple of weeks? Or what would you like to do? I'm looking for consensus here.
What is the schedule? The time frame. What does that indicate to you, Chief? Do you think we need one next week, or?
Linda, you said 2 weeks before we see anything back.
We won't see any resumes until after May 22nd, end of day, when Anita has captured all of what has come in, then we get them. So we don't have any idea of what questions we want to ask or these written questions. Might behoove us to move on that because there's really only not that much time.
So the next Wednesday is the 6th or the 13th, and then the 20th is, the Wednesday before the deadline for the resumes. So, I mean, I'm thinking, and this is just because I'm still working full time, remotely, which I'm very grateful for, first of all. So having enough time to just look at everything. I'm happy to do it if you want to do it next week. I don't know that it hurts us to take the second week to look at the legal and to look through the questions and kind of do a little bit more. But I leave that to you guys. I'm happy to.
So that would be the 13th?
Yeah, I would like the 13th. I think that makes sense.
Okay, why don't we, Mike?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay, why don't we plan for 5 o'clock?
That'll be a problem for me because I have a meeting at 5 o'clock on the 13th.
Okay.
Can
we meet a different night that week? Or
I could, yeah, Tuesday or Thursday.
Does Tuesday work for everybody? That would be the 12th.
At
Right?
5 o'clock, Chief?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I have a select board at 7, but that's all virtual, so I don't think we're going to go 2 hours.
Well, we will not be going 2 hours.
My select board meeting went 3 hours last night, so.
We're bumping 45 minutes and we're probably 20 minutes too long as we are. But
that makes me feel better because when I was on the board, I used to think like, how is it possible that we start this meeting at 6:30 and we're still here at 10 o'clock?
I know, there are times.
So 5/12 at 5 p.m. Everybody's good with that?
in Linda,
And the basic agenda item will be a review of the response of having questions in or out of executive session and to start discussing questions.
Sure. Yeah, I think we've got some time now that everybody we might be able to, put together some scenarios and questions for in a couple of weeks to discuss that we're going to give to the candidate. So that's not a secret or, doesn't have to be confidential. So,
by the way, I think the questions that we sent out, I think the questions here that Linda sent out earlier are really good questions. This isn't the Holy Grail. I mean, it's there's certain information we want to know and we want to see how they respond to the request for the information. So I think it's a great, what Linda sent out, I think is a great starting point.
Yep. Agreed. Excellent. Thank you, Linda.
All kudos to the past committee because when I got assigned to asked to be on this committee, I asked the chair of that past search committee if I could review whatever he had, and he gave me a binder chock full of information. This was some of the stuff that I grabbed out of it.
Oh, there you go. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
And I'm hoping there's no discussion. So we'll go through the, all those in favor, Julie?
Aye.
Dan?
All right. Thank you, Chief.
Linda?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye, thanks, Chief.
And I will see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.